Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, good morning, good morning out there in Blog Talk Radio land, our off-the-shelf listeners, our loyal listeners who've been with us here. Oh, my goodness, you guys, 14 years, and then the people who might be just tuning in for the first time, and we're definitely going to introduce the show so you can, for those of you who, this is your first time tuning in to Off the Shelf, you can know who is this lady speaking and what is this show about. But before we begin, I just want to let you know, if this is your first time, you are listening to the Winning Book Radio Show, Off the Shelf. And here's a thought that I just want to start with before I introduce our guest this morning that I'm excited to bring in front of you, and then we'll learn more about his writing and why he chose to write the types of books he wrote and the characters in his stories and what kids think about these books. But here's this thought, first of all. Success is no accident. It is hard work, perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice, and most of all, love of what you're doing or learning to do. And that's from Pelé. He was a very successful soccer player years ago. But success is no accident. It doesn't just happen. I think sometimes we want things to be magical and just to happen. But it's hard work, perseverance, learning, studying, sacrifice, and most of all, love of what you're doing or learning to do. Again, that's from Pelé. We are coming down, you guys, to our last Saturday in May 2019. And have you yet gotten a copy of Love Pour Over Me? If you value mystery, you tell yourself, I love mystery books, I would ask you why you haven't gotten a copy of Love Pour Over Me and relationships. There's a complicated father-son relationship in Love Pour Over Me. The father has untreated alcoholism. But if you read that story and you see the changes in the father at the end of that book, there's a movie that I saw, I can only imagine, is similar in some aspects to that. And you value relationships. There's also 4 friends in here that meet in college, and this friendship is the bond is everlasting and a soulmate relationship. So there are relationships, and there's a murder mystery. Curious to know if you can figure out who done it before it's revealed at the end of Love Pour Over Me. It's May 25th, 2019. Why don't you have a copy of Love Pour Over Me yet? You can get it in ebook or in print format. All you got to do is at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can just click over there, get your copy, start enjoying it this weekend. Love Pour Over Me by Denise Turney. And now let us go and meet our very special off-the-shelf guest. Now, our special off-the-shelf guest this morning is Kevin Coolidge. Kevin is the founder of Totally Ninja Raccoons. Don't you love that name? Totally Ninja Raccoons. He has authored 11 books, many in the Totally Ninja Raccoons book series. And he works with students generally at the 4th grade level, but across different school grade levels. And he also operates My Shelf Books and Gifts with his wife, Casey. And we encourage you to visit Kevin online and if he has any other websites, we'll ask him to share them with us when he comes on. But his website is authorbookings.com, and it's spelled just the way it sounds, Author Bookings, AuthorBookings, authorbookings.com /members/Kevin-Coolidge, and that's KEVIN-COOLIDGE, KEVIN-COOLIDGE. So I'm going to do it again. authorbookings.com /members/Kevin-Coolidge with a C. Let's give Kevin a warm off-the-shelf Books Talk Radio welcome. Welcome to Off the Shelf, Kevin.
Thank you, Denise, and good morning to you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I enjoyed, when I researched for each of the shows, I learn more about the guests when I'm doing my research, and then even more, of course, doing the interviews. And every guest has always said something that has blessed me or that I feel like, wow, that's a new way to see that. And curious and excited to see what you will share this morning. Now, the first few questions that I'm going to ask you, Kevin, I ask every guest that comes on Off the Shelf, just to give our listeners a little backstory on the guest before launch right into the interview. So, to begin, would you please tell Off the Shelf listeners where you grew up and what life was like for you growing up?
Well, I grew up in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, which is a little rural town in north central Pennsylvania, about 20 miles from the New York State border, and that's where I live now. I did go off to college in Wisconsin, and I lived in Colorado for a number of years, but this is where I grew up. This is where my heart is, and I moved back. When I was growing up, I just turned 50 here this month, and so when I grew up, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't, we got 3 channels of television. 2 of them didn't come in most of the time. So I grew up reading a lot, and I come from a family that reads a lot. Both my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents were all very big readers. I grew up loving the library and books, and that I feel that was very important for where I am today, having a bookstore that I run with my lovely wife, and being a writer and choosing specifically to write mostly for children, because that's where it's most important. That's when, if you don't embrace reading as a child, it is going to be very hard later in life. It's never too late to become a reader, but I feel the earlier the better.
You know what? And I do agree with that, and I'm so glad. My aunt used to read to us, my Aunt Pat, but I just loved books. It was almost organic, and I don't remember anybody really pushing it. My siblings weren't into. My sister's a school teacher now, but they weren't into reading like I was. But I think it does start early. And when I was in Atlanta, I take the MARTA, or I see people. I always see somebody with a book, whether, and a lot of people now, they're e-books, but people still love to read. There's a lot of books that come out, but it's still something that people treasure and love, great stories. So you grew up reading a lot when you were a kid. I remember the 3 channels and, just only a few of them coming in. But when you were a kid and you dreamed about what you could do when you became an adult, what did you want to become? What did you dream of becoming when you were a kid?
Well, I grew up loving animals, and of course I still love animals. Most of my books are about animals. I actually wanted to be a veterinarian for most of my childhood, and when I got a little bit older, I still was interested in being a veterinarian, but I didn't really have the money for that much school. So I started off when I went to college in environmental science. So.
Oh.
And that love of animals really carried over, because even though I have a background in environmental science, but even though I don't do that, I have a bookstore. All my books are about animals. Of course, the totally Ninja Raccoons, but I have several picture books, and I have one of my latest picture books is Molly, the dog with diabetes, and that's a real dog. And I have my other picture book is Hobo, the cat, and Hobo Finds a Home, and that was my first cat. So my love of animals is, I feel comes across in all my books.
You know what? And then, as I was doing the research to our listeners for today's show, I was really surprised by this. Who knew that Pennsylvania had a Grand Canyon, and how far is it from Philadelphia? I was really surprised, because I used to live in Bensalem, which is a little north of Center City, Philadelphia. I don't recall ever hearing about it, so I was like, oh, this is interesting. How far is that, Pennsylvania Grand Canyon?
About 3.5, 4 hours. So we're closer. The Pennsylvania Grand Canyon is up in Tioga County, and we're actually closer to the Finger Lakes of New York State than we are Philadelphia. Philadelphia is, of course, in the southeast portion of Pennsylvania, and we are way up in the north central. It's right up in Tioga County. We call it the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. It's sometimes called the Pennsylvania Gorge, and it's lovely. area with lots of wildlife and wild eagles and osprey and deer. So it's nice and rural here. We're part of what's known as the Pennsylvania Wilds.
Pennsylvania Wilds. Okay,
Yeah,
that's a new one.
Yeah,
but it makes me think of like the Poconos.
We're about 3 hours from the Poconos. But that's more up. We're up there, but we're to the west of the Poconos, and we're a little more wild than the Poconos. Poconos are nice. I mean, we have those mountains. We're up in the hills of Pennsylvania, but we're a little more wild than the Poconos.
Okay. What inspired you, Kevin, to sit down and start writing children's books?
Well, my first book was actually a children's book. Like Hobo Finds a Home I wrote that about 11 years ago. Probably, no, because time goes by faster every year. So that was back in 2007. So that's actually 12 years ago. And I wrote that because it was very organic. It was very natural. Hobo Finds a Home was the story of how my cat Hobo come to live with me. And it would be the story that I would tell my nephews and my nieces how my cat come to live with me, because I grew up with animals, but I grew up with dogs, and we didn't have cats. Our dogs were big dogs that didn't really get along with cats. So what cats I saw were usually at other people's places. And at the time, I didn't have a cat. And Hobo, this little cat, started hanging around where I was living out in the country. And of course, I hate to see anything go hungry, so I would put out some food for it. And I didn't have a cat, so I didn't have cat food. So I put out some tuna fish. And of course, you can't feed a cat tuna fish every day, so I went and got some cat food and started feeding them. And it was out in the country, so there were skunks and raccoons and this big fat cat next door who would come over and eat the food. So I would bring the food in to make sure that the little kitten would have a chance to eat. And from there, it was, I might as well just adopt him, because he just kind of moved in and rearranged the furniture, and before I know it, I had a cat.
And just that simple, cats, they're so independent, you wouldn't think they'd come in. But maybe they read people really well, and they know who to go with and who not to go with. Because my friend, somebody left a cat in the apartment when they moved, I guess, and then she took that cat in. But they're so independent, you wouldn't think they'd just go and, hey, I'll hang out with you for the next 10 years. But they actually do. Have you written, before we go in and talking about the Totally Ninja Raccoons, which I'm excited to get into, but I wanted to ask you, have you written any adult novels? And if so, I was going to ask you which is easier to write for our listeners who are writers. Is it easier to write for children or for adults, if you've written adult novels?
I have written one adult novella. I wrote Operation Ragnarok, which is a fantastical adventure story. And actually, I would say it's harder to write for children.
Interesting.
Per 1,000 words, I spend more time. Now, of course, the novella, it took me longer because it's longer. But per 1,000 words, I feel it's actually harder to write for children. And when you write for children, and this for me, to really do it, I feel you need to access the childlike part of yourself. So it's harder to, not only does it take longer, but you have to, it's harder to get into that mindset of writing for children. Because sometimes if I'm feeling particularly grumpy that day, or if I had a bad day, it's harder to write for children because I need to kind of put that aside. Sometimes if I'm writing and you also have to be more appropriate, because sometimes I'll write something for adult, you don't have to worry about it, because is that appropriate? But you write something for a child, and you want to make sure that it's appropriate for the age that you're writing it for. And then at the same time, one of the hardest things about a children's book is because you want to write something that a child will enjoy, but you also have to write something that an adult will buy for a child. So there's also that aspect of it. Because sometimes you see a children's book and it's like, oh, that's a great book. That's a book that a child should read. And we can all agree that, yes, that is good, that a child should read that book. But at the same time, you want a book that a child will embrace reading, that will love reading, that doesn't feel like I have to read this. So yeah, it's more challenging to write a children's book, I believe.
And you know what? I've heard that. I have heard that from some, top-selling authors who have said, and then some people say the shorter the piece, just the more challenging it is. You have less time to tell a full story, but to keep a child's attention and not write down to the child, and again, the parents gotta want to buy the book as well. It's just so many, the illustrations, the story, and I think a book series is just great. Once they fall in love with the characters, then the kid's I want to get that Ninja Raccoon book number 3, because they want to know what's going to happen next. Now, Beverly Cleary, she was a highly celebrated, talking about children's book writer, she was highly celebrated on her 103rd birthday, and she's famous for the Ramona books, and I read some of those when I was a kid, and they were written for the 3rd to 5th grade levels. And that character was honest and spunky, and readers definitely knew what Ramona was feeling. She was very direct, her character, and she was empowering. She made it you could be confident to express what you were really feeling or thinking. What do you hope to gift your readers with? So Beverly Cleary, I remember not only the excitement, but she let you know it's okay to go through this. Ramona's going through it too, and it's okay to feel this way, and this is what you might do. Look at Ramona. What do you hope to gift your readers with when they finish reading one of your children's books?
Well, one of my goals with the series is, because the Totally Ninja Raccoons, see, they choose to become ninjas because they already have the mask, and what that is like sometimes you just have to go with your strengths. So like the origin story, like when I was writing the first book, like the first book has their origin story of why they decided to become ninjas. Is they're going through their favorite restaurant, which is for raccoons, is usually the trash cans, and this big guy comes out and he shakes their broom and he yells at them and he says, "Get out of my trash, you little thieves!" The raccoons look at each other and like, "We're not thieves. No, this food was thrown out. It's fair game. No, we're not going to be. Why be ordinary bandits when you can be ninjas?" So a lot of times it's what I want kids to feel like. I want them to be empowered. I want them to be curious. I want them to, not have somebody decide where to put you. Everybody's has had somebody who has talked down to them or said, "Well, you can't do that." And I want them to realize that being something a lot of times is a choice, and so they choose, instead of being thieves. A lot of times people, a common nickname for raccoons is trash pandas. And, why be a trash panda when you can be a ninja?
Okay. Why be when you can be a ninja? I was going to ask you, so did you see some raccoons? What happened? How did you get the ideal for this ninja? We know, like, the Ninja Turtles. I just think this is so cool. Where did you get the ideal for the Ninja Raccoons from? Did you see really in life a raccoon doing something, a team of raccoons, and that's how you got the idea?
Well, kind of, because I live in rural Pennsylvania, so raccoons are something that I see frequently, and there's also a story about that because, I love raccoons and I love watching raccoons, and raccoons are little ninjas, but it goes back further than that. My last name is Coolidge, and of course there's a President Coolidge, which was a former president of the United States, and President Coolidge had a pet raccoon in the White House.
Oh.
So my joke is kind of that Coolidges and raccoons go back a long ways. So he had a pet raccoon, and actually he had a pet raccoon. He had several animals, but one of them was a raccoon. Like he was a big, President Coolidge was a big animal lover. And my family is huge animal lovers. We grew up with animals, and I love raccoons, how they have their dexterous little hands, and I'm like, they would just be perfect ninjas. Turtles, I love the Ninja Turtles, but face it, raccoons are natural ninjas.
They do. They are, like, when you think about it, they're very active, and they just, especially if they get upset. You don't want to be in their path if they get angry. Can you now give us an overview of the Totally Ninja Raccoons?
Yes. So the Totally Ninja Raccoons is a series I wrote specifically for reluctant readers. Those readers that they're not necessarily love reading. These are to really interest readers. They're about second to fourth grade level, and I specifically wrote them for that age level with fairly short chapters. Each chapter has an illustration to draw kids in. It's about the three brothers who they have adventures and they learn something in every book, and every book also has a cryptid. Now, cryptid is a creature that is unrealized by modern-day science. So an example of a cryptid is Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster. So each one of these has a cryptid in it, and it's they usually investigate the cryptid, or something happens. Like, for example, the first one, the Totally Ninja Raccoons meet Bigfoot. This sets up the premise for the series and the main antagonists of the Ninja Raccoons, which is the cat board. Have you ever heard of the cat board?
No, this Bigfoot. I've heard of Bigfoot. I never heard of the cat lord. Is this like the Bigfoot, where people think this really exists?
Well, the cat board. Well, I love cats, but face it, cats kind of want to take over the world. You probably suspected that. So the cat board is a secret organization of cats who want to take over the world. So what the first book does is sets up the cat boards. What it does is, like, the Totally Ninja Raccoons decide that they're going to become ninjas. But what do you do if you're a ninja? Well, you need a ninja job, right?
Okay.
So the Ninja Raccoons answer an ad put out by Gypsy, who is head of the cat board. See, what I know about the cat board is Gypsy is my cat at home. So Gypsy Gypsy hires the raccoons to capture Bigfoot. Now, they don't ask why, but why Gypsy wants them to capture Bigfoot is so that Gypsy can use Bigfoot's powers as stealth in her quest for world domination. But Gypsy doesn't want to pay the raccoons. She ends up double-crossing the raccoons, and the raccoons let Bigfoot go and become friends with Bigfoot. So what I do with this, and that kind of sets up the cat board as the bad guys. And a lot of the books are basically cats versus raccoons. So for example, in the Christmas edition, the Totally Ninja Raccoons and the Catmas Caper, what the cat board decides that they're going to rebrand Christmas, call it Catmas. Everybody gets an empty box and a kitten, and the raccoons have to rescue Santa Claus because the cat board has somebody kidnap Santa, and the raccoons have to rescue him and save Christmas.
Yeah, these stories sound so cool. They sound they're written for children, but we all have the kids still in us. They sound like, and I love the illustrations as well. Is there a main character who appears in each book in the series, or if there's several, like the 3 or 4 raccoons? What are they like? What's each? What are their names, and what are each of these ninja raccoons like?
So there's 3 brothers, and there is Rascal. He's the shortest brother, and he loves donuts, and he's great with his paws. He makes really cool gadgets. He's a little goofy and loves both his brothers, even when they pick on him, but maybe not right then. So I do a lot of they're brothers, so I do a lot of sibling dynamics. And then there's Bandit. Bandit is the oldest brother. He's tall and lean, and he's super smart. He loves to read. He leads the Totally Ninja Raccoons, but he couldn't do it by himself. And then here's the middle brother. The middle brother is named Kevin. He might be the middle brother, but he refuses to be stuck there. He has the moves and the street smarts that the Totally Ninja Raccoons are going to need, even if it sometimes gets them in trouble as well as out of trouble. So each brother is in each book. And then I have Gypsy, who is head of the cat board, and she is kind of the cat who, she's not really good at being bad. She's the not so bad guy, but she's in most of the books, and she sets up, she tries to take over the world in several of the books, and the Totally Ninja Raccoons have to stop her.
So is she? So they're the three brothers. Are there other raccoons that come out to help them, or without? I don't want to give the books away. And then is this cat? She's just looking to take over the world. Is she doing this all by herself, or does she have a team of folks helping her out?
She has a team. So, for example, they have. There aren't any other raccoons in the books, but there's several members of the cat board, and I've picked different cats to kind of give that international flavor. So there's Gypsy, but then I use Huck and Finn. Huck and Finn are the cats at the bookstore. So we have cats at home, and we have cats that just live at the bookstore, and they are named Huck and Finn. They're brothers, so they are on the cat board, and they kind of use, they're kind of comic relief. They say funny things back and forth to each other. And then there's Velvet, who is our cat at home. I gave her a part. And then there's also, I sometimes introduce other members of the cat board in different books. Like for the book on the Totally Ninja Raccoons and the Secret of Nesmith Lake, that one has a Loch Ness Monster. And that one I introduce, because the cat board is international, that one has a Scottish fold named Scotty. A Scottish fold is a certain breed of cat that started off in Britain, and they have like the folded floppy ears, and they're a Scottish fold. I also have a Persian cat that quite often sits on the board, as well as a Sphinx, which is one of those cats that doesn't have any hair, because they're kind of an Egyptian flavor. They're actually from Canada, but people think that they're from Egypt, so I kind of put her in there for kind of an international flavor, and I introduce different members of sometimes different cats depending on the scenario and such.
Now, are all of these ninja, the cats, the raccoons, are their experiences? Are they all outdoors?
Yeah, most of them are outdoors because the Totally Ninja Raccoons, they have this clubhouse. And so there are some scenes that are in a clubhouse that, because the Totally Ninja Raccoon's clubhouse is actually a secret. It's hidden in a junkyard. They have this little white house, and some of them are in a cave. So Gypsy has, like a lot of bad guys, she has this secret cave that's underneath her house that she plots some of the cat boards. So there's some inside scenes. There's a lot of outdoor scenes. Like for example, the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon is a major feature here in Tioga County. So there's several scenes that take place outside, like in the canyon or on the Pine Creek Rail Trail, which is along the bottom of the canyon that goes through. So it's a lot of outdoor scenes. There's the Totally Ninja Raccoons Meet the Little Green Men most of the scenes take place as a state park. So it's a lot of outside, encourage children to be outside, and reading is very important, but it's important to get the full experience of life. So a lot of that is outside and doing some hiking and doing exploring. Some of the things that I did when I grew up. I mean, I loved to read, but I also loved being outside and playing in the creek or going for a hike or playing in the woods. And those are all experiences that I feel are very important for a child, as well for adults.
You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. I grew up when kids did go outside and play, and you don't see kids outside riding bikes and skateboarding and just running, jump roping, and you don't see kids outside. I know that we got our video games and social media, but I wonder what generations from now, if people don't switch back, what that's going to do to us as humans. When I grew up, kids, we played outside all day long. You weren't in the house, but now it's almost just the opposite. So I appreciate that your stories encourage getting outside and being active. Can you tell us about the lessons that the raccoons learn in the Totally Ninja Raccoons Meet the Weird and Wacky Werewolf? What are some of the lessons that they learn?
So the lesson with that is, because the Weird and Wacky Werewolf, there's kind of two lessons with that. And I feel like with these, I don't lecture. The legends, the lessons kind of come within the context of the story. So in the Weird and Wacky Werewolf, what they're doing is starts off with a baseball scene. So they're playing baseball, because baseball and sports and team sports, very much encourage teamwork. So they are ninjas, but they're brothers. So they all rely. No one of the Ninja Raccoons is the hero of the story. I mean, they rely on each other. They all have their strengths, but they're very much a team. So with baseball, you might be a great hitter, but but the game isn't all about getting hits. So I use baseball and the first scene to kind of give to show teamwork, to show that that's an important part of life, is being able to be a team. And then the second lesson, see, the weird and wacky werewolf, I don't want to give too much away, but these aren't too scary. Children, and of course me, why I put cryptids in, because I loved cryptids when I was growing up. I still do. But one of the lessons is that things aren't as scary as what you think, because the werewolf turns out to be a 12-year-old boy named Billy. So he's actually, in the book, he actually turns out to be more like a big shaggy dog than that real scary werewolf. And that's one of the lessons, too, with these, is that most of life isn't as scary as what you think it's going to be. I mean, like most of the cryptids they meet, they become friends, they learn about them. It's in the back of each book, I have a little bit about the creature, and and I encourage children to, like, are werewolves real? Well, read about werewolves in other books and decide for yourself. So one of my goals with these is to encourage curiosity, and of course not just read my books, but to learn to love reading books and read about some other books about werewolves, and you decide for yourself if it's real or is it just mythology, and it's fine to love it even if it's not real, and that most of these things that you think are scary, I mean, you grow up and you might be afraid of some of these things, and they're not as scary as what you think they're going to be, and knowledge and learning about something will make things less scary.
Okay, and agree with that. And and books are for the imagination anyway. So when we're writing like fiction, people, depending on like sci-fi and stuff. Although some sci-fi movies, I look today like with the robots and artificial intelligence, and I'm like, were those science fiction writers really just making all that up, or were they ahead of the curve? Because some of these movies, I'm thinking, I think some of this stuff could happen or is happening now. But generally with fiction, some like sci-fi, like I was saying, you just suspend the part of you that critiques, is this true, or judges, and you just enjoy the ride. Now, do you read your books, the Totally Ninja Raccoons and your other stories, do you read them for schools? And what's that experience like when you're getting ready to go into a classroom and read to a group of students?
I do read to students. I do school visits. I've done several school visits. I've done over 15, 20. I've done probably 20 school visits where I go in, I talk about my books, I talk about the writing process, and I'll read some of my books aloud, and that's one of the things where I say, like, writing for children is harder, but it's much more, I think, rewarding than writing for adults, because an adult, if they like your book, they might say, I like that, but if a child likes your book, I mean, he's enthusiastic about it. I'll often get fan mail, so. Like, I love reading to children. I still, even though I've done it before, every time I do it, I'm still a little nervous until I start. But I mean, one of the things about presenting to children and reading to children is, they love it. It's like it makes a big difference, and they're always enthusiastic, and it's definitely more rewarding. So I love having them ask questions. Okay, go ahead.
Do you use props? Do you use props when you go in? How do you, like, to get the kids ready, or the teachers get them? I've worked with, like, Junior Achievement, and the teachers get a lot of that going. When you go in to read, it's like a reading hour for the kids. Do you bring in, like, props and pictures to help really stimulate their imagination before you start the reading?
I'll sometimes bring in some props. I'll sometimes bring in, like, a stuffed raccoon, and quite often when I do my presentation, I'll do a little PowerPoint, which I'll do some pictures. I try not to do too much, because you want enough to boost their imagination, but you don't want too much to distract. So one of the things when I read is I try to be very, and this is taking some time because I'm used to reading aloud. I try to be very enthusiastic because quite often when somebody reads aloud, some people don't like reading aloud, and I understand that. But sometimes when they don't read, they don't like you have one of the things when I read is I think of it as almost like an actor. I've done a little bit of acting, not a lot, but you put yourself into it. Like I do the voices, I do the enthusiasm. I'll do some movement. Like when I read, and I might put my hands in the hips, and I make sure to be loud enough for the kids to enjoy it. So I really put myself into the story when I do it, and that I feel really comes across and really makes the kids enthusiastic too.
Oh, you know what? I can tell even from your interview here that you're good at doing that, and I'm sure the students love to hear you read to them. That share, what have kids and their parents, what have readers been saying about your books, Kevin?
Oh, the kids love the books, and that's one of the things, like I said, that makes it so rewarding. Is I'll have like fan mail. I mean, I've had several pieces of fan mail where they'll draw me a picture and then they'll mail it to me. I did this event back in March in which I was at a school event, and I sold several books, and then the father, because I have, of course, in the modern age, I have like my website address in the back of the book, and the father emailed me and said, we bought these books, and you have a new fan. My son loved your books, and he actually wrote his own Ninja Raccoon book. And that's one of the things that, is what makes it so worth it. So not only does he love my books, which is great, that's a reward in itself, but he felt the need to write himself. So, I mean, here I am. I might be, that might be the next great American author, might be that boy. He might grow up and be an author. And if he doesn't, that's fine too, but he loved something enough so that he felt he had to write it down. He had to do his own story. And that's one of the things I want to accomplish with my books is, because we're all natural storytellers at heart. And, storytelling is at the heart of our civilization. It's what we pass down even before we develop a written language. We did storytelling, and that was how we passed on information. So to have a child embrace that is one of the things that really makes it worth it.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask you, because with children's books, and I think some adult books might start, novels moving this way, because to get the full experience, we got our audio books, you got your children's books, and then people need like the more the senses you can get involved in a story. I think it's maybe easier for a reader to connect more fully with the story. So with children's books especially, it's the illustrations. So where did you find the illustrators for your books?
Well, the illustrators come from, like, one is, well, they mostly come from people that I know. So I'm lucky with being a writer and being in a bookstore. I get to meet a lot of people, and I get to meet a lot of creative people. So actually, I was really lucky. The illustrator of the Totally Ninja Raccoons is actually a longtime friend of mine that I grew up with. He went to school in Tyler County. He now lives in Florida, but I grew up with him, knew him for a long time. And when he lived here, because I had this idea for the Ninja Raccoons quite a while ago, and I talked to him, and he drew up what's known as concept art, some of the ideals for the Ninja Raccoons. But I got busy with life, and I put it on the back burner, and then I finally decided that it was time to write him. But so we do it the old-fashioned way. I mean, he draws them, and then he digitizes them. So when we do it in the book, and then for some of the illustrators for my other books are, because every illustrator has their own style, and so I have some other friends that do some of the other books.
Okay, so you're very, I would say, and I don't do children's books. I'd like to, but I do adult fiction. But you it sounds like you're very fortunate. You knew people already that you could get to do the illustrations for your book. That said,
I already. Yep.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, so what I was going to say is, so you knew people who are already illustrators. What advice would you give to an off-the-shelf listener who they're like, this is the last piece, it's the last thing I need before I publish my children's book. They're looking for a children's book illustrator. What advice would you share with that person to find a good illustrator?
To find a good illustrator, well, the best thing to do is to ask, is to put it out there. Because that's how I found these. That's how I found my illustrator. Because every illustrator has its own piece. So the latest illustrator I knew, I'd actually been friends with for quite a while. I'm like, I bet you she would like to do that. So I asked, and it was her first. It was like on the illustrator that I used for Molly, the dog with diabetes. That was the first book she illustrated. She's been doing art for a long time, but that was the first book she'd done. And she's like, I would love to. And of course, she's used I finished another book, and she's working on the second book. So the best thing to do is to put it out there. It's whether you put it out to the universe, but you have to take action. So it's like, I just whether it's posting on social media, you say, I just finished my children's book, and I would love to find an illustrator. Do you know anybody? Talking with people. Bring it up in conversation and see if you find the right person for you, because every book, every illustrator has their own style. So it's finding the right one for you. And I really recommend this, doing that. And
are there any places that you?
Any places? Well, it's there's nothing like in this age of social media and such. There's nothing like this, meeting people face to face. So whether it's a small, I like to, as a writer, I like to do several small festivals. So if you're, if you are in a, if you go to a small festival and there's somebody there as a writer, talk to them and see if they have any suggestions. So for example, my illustrator, she's currently working on something for me, but she would like to do something else. So it's not like she's going to illustrate just for me. So asking somebody who's already done it is fine too. Say, I love the books. I love the illustrator on the Totally Ninja Raccoons. Can I have his name? Is he interested in doing more? And of course, I've worked with him on 9 books, so of course I love his work. So I would recommend him. There's nothing wrong with asking that. There's maybe you have a friend that is, that is an artist. Maybe they've also wanted to do a children's book. So just asking, it's for me, it's still that one-on-one connection that seems to be the most beneficial. I mean, you can put it out there on Facebook and you might get somebody, but that talking to somebody who's already done it is a great way.
So let's talk contract really quickly. And this wasn't a question I had planned to ask you in advance, but just talking about the illustrations, because I do know a writer that when her first self-published novel came out, she thought, maybe I'll sell a couple hundred copies, and she was really hustling it, but it hit the New York Times bestseller list, and the illustrator came back like, I want more money. And this was a person who was adult fiction who just illustrated her cover. So, she said, you got to have an ironclad contract. I don't care if you're working with a friend, as this person had been a friend, and I don't know if that kind of did something to their relationship. But what is it like putting together a contract for you as the writer, the owner of the book, and now the illustrator is coming in, similar to when you work with an editor? Do you have any tips around that for our listeners if they're looking to come to agreement, terms, a contract, and working with the illustrator, especially if the book really, what if the Totally Ninja Raccoons book takes off? I mean, it could just take off, and then there's millions of dollars involved. Can you give some tips around that, contracting with an illustrator?
No, that's a great question, and actually that's something I'm just at that level where, I am working on that myself, so I don't have a lot of useful tips. What I do what I've started to do, because with the Totally Ninja Raccoons, I've just paid my illustrator, but I don't. It's a good idea to have a contract. Now with my picture books, I have set a set amount, and we don't have a physical. We don't have a contract, and that's probably something that I should start looking into. I've just done a set amount of money, and once she's paid, then that's it. And then if the books take off, then she's already been paid. Though I would probably try to do something like a bonus or something, but I don't have a lot of useful answers for that. That is something that one of the things as an author is that you're always learning yourself, even as long as I've been writing, because of course I've been writing the Totally Ninja Raccoons for. Actually, this month it's been 4 years. They've only been out a little bit over 3, but of course, by the time I started writing them, I finished my first one just about 4 years ago, and there's always something new to learn, and that's something that I feel I need to learn more about.
Yeah, especially if those books take off, and all it takes is one school or the child you sell your book to a child, and their parent is very influential, and boom. It takes off, which is not a bad thing to have to deal with, but just something to be prepared for. The lady I'm talking about, I don't think she thought it would hit the New York Times bestseller list, but that was one of the things that came up once it did. So your books are written predominantly, I know you work with fourth graders, but just to let our listeners know, what age group are your books written for?
Well, the reading level is about second to fourth grade. So mostly second to third grade is where it seems to be is the target. I do have younger readers and older readers. So of course, younger readers, if they're really good, because one of the tricky things about writing for a child is reading level is quite often all over the place. But that's about what the reading level is at. Now, sometimes I'll have younger readers if they're really good, or if it's never too young to read to a child. You can read way above a child's level if you're reading to them. And actually, I have had children even older than fourth grade love the books because they like the subject matter. So, but that is where the focus is. Like when I do a talk, it is mostly when I do a school presentation, it's mostly like second and third graders, though I've done up to fourth.
Okay. Now, do you find, Kevin, that schools, this is something that I always think, but it could be wrong what I'm thinking, but do you find that schools and libraries are open or maybe even more open to carrying children's books? Because you don't see children's books, I don't think of them as like e-books. That wouldn't fly so much. But do you find that schools and libraries are open to carrying children's books?
Yeah, they're definitely more open because it is, because schools and libraries really focused on children. It's kind of the same reason why I focus on children, because it's so important. And like I said, I've been doing the bookstore with my wife for almost 13 years, and this come from my experience. So these books, why I chose to write for this demographic is because I found that right around second grade, if a child doesn't embrace reading, then they start to fall behind. So that's one of the reasons why I chose to write for that particular age group. Now, earlier books, I do some picture books, and that's important. And writing for adults, that's important too. It's not like there's something that's unimportant. I just felt that was in stage from my personal experience that it was very important to hit. So, and it's good that you mentioned books. So, like the Totally Ninja Raccoons are only available in print format. Now, I did an adult book, and I made that available as a real book, a real physical book, as well as an e-book. But I haven't done that with the Totally Ninja Raccoons because I feel, I feel from my personal experience and also from research I did, that having a real physical book makes a big difference. So yeah, I do feel that schools and libraries are particularly are more likely to have you as a guest or a visiting author if you do a children's book. I've been invited to several local libraries. I've been invited to libraries down in Harrisburg, and Harrisburg is about 3 hours from me. So I actually have a small fan base in Harrisburg, and they are, they'll invite me. Like they've had author events, and I have had several libraries from an hour away invite me because, they know how important it is for a child to embrace reading early in life.
I just think it's awesome. I think it's awesome, and I love those totally ninja raccoons. Now I want to talk a little bit about My Shelf Books and Gifts. When did your wife and you open My Shelf Books and Gifts?
Well, we opened for My Shelf Books and Gifts in July of 2006. So that was
okay.
So it'll be 13 years this summer that we've been operating the bookstore. And actually, we did that before, like when I met my wife. I didn't meet my wife until I was in my 30s, but we actually met doing a local play festival. Like I said, I've done a little bit of acting, not much. I don't consider myself that great an actor, but one of the reasons why I decided to be in a play festival is that they were having a contest for a written play. So I wrote a play, and my play didn't win, but I decided that one of the best ways to learn more about it was to be in a play, so I can learn about it from the inside. And actually, I met my wife at that time, and my wife is a very big reader. She's a bibliophile, and she was selling books part-time online, and I was selling some online as well. And so we kind of combined our inventory. We were selling some books online, and we quickly outgrew one of the things that we love to do as a couple was go to book sales, like at a library, or when they have like the library used book sales. We would love to go to those and buy books to sell, online as well as to read in person, because we were huge readers. But we quickly outgrew our small apartment, and this little place in our hometown opened up, and we decided to open up a small bookstore we started with just used books, and we started with just 3,000, which might sound like a lot, but it didn't take up very much space. We started with maybe 800 square feet, and then we added some new books. We started with a wholesaler, and we added books, and we outgrew the space, and we went to we're now in our third location, so it's
wow.
Town, but we have probably about 50,000 books right now in about 1,200 square feet, and we started off with about 600. So
impressive. You say that like it's some small thing. That is, oh my gosh. So an independent.
It's a lot of work. So it is, it does take a lot of work, and we work at it pretty much every day.
An independent bookstore, though, in these times, these Amazon times, still growing. Tell us, please, where My Shelf Books and Gifts is for anybody tuning in today or in the archives. When the show hits the archives, they can stop by and support My Shelf Books and Gifts.
Well, from My Shelf Books and Gifts is in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, and of course, I very much encourage you to come here. We're a great tourist town. We have a lot of outdoor activities. We have the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. We have the Pine Creek Rail Trail. A lot of nice little shopping areas. So we're right on East Avenue in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. And of course, you can support us even if you never come to Wellsboro. You can support if you want to support a small independent bookstore. You can go to wellsborobookstore.com, and we sell things online all the time. Like in this internet age, you can order from our website, and we do ship. Same thing, you can order. Now, the Totally Ninja Raccoons and all my books are available wherever books are sold. But if you want a signed, personalized copy, you can come to wellsborobookstore.com and order a book from me as an author. Or, having a small bookstore, I love bookstores in general. So if you're lucky enough to have a bookstore in your town, well, you can, if they don't stock the Totally Ninja Raccoons, they can order them, so you can order them anywhere. And like I said, if you're ever looking for, we get lots of people from the Philadelphia area. We're up here in the mountains of Pennsylvania. So if you live in the Poconos, we have even though Poconos are nice, sometimes it's nice to get away. So we have visitors from the Poconos, Philadelphia. We have a lot of people from the Lancaster area come up and see us. We have this Memorial Day weekend. We just had some people from Baltimore, Maryland come in. We have a lot of Canadians that visit Wellsboro.
Oh, interesting. What has operating, as we come down about 5 minutes left in today's show, what has operating a bookstore taught you, Kevin, about book marketing and book selling?
Well, it's taught me a lot. So I mean, it's especially as a writer. So it's important to get the idea for your book across. And when you're writing a book, it's that finding that balance of writing a book that you want to write, but also writing the book that is going to sell. And sometimes sometimes that's two different books, and sometimes it's not. But because you can write whatever you want, but it doesn't mean that it's going to sell. So it's interesting. I'm always it's one of those things that I'm always learning. Because sometimes it's a great book, and if you have an idea for a book that you've put out there trying to find an agent, and an agent said no, it doesn't mean it's not a good book. It just means that they don't know how to sell it. So it's learning how to sell your book. It's basically learning how to find your people for that book. For example, Operation Ragnarok is a great book, but it's a little niche. So finding the right person for it has been a little bit tougher. The Totally Ninja Raccoons is a wider audience, and that is something that I found to be easier to sell because kids love it. I mean, people love Operation Ragnarok, but it's finding the right audience for it is a little bit tougher. So it's finding that right audience for the book. Every book is there for a reason, and not every book is for every person. So it's really defining, because one of the things I find with authors, especially like smaller independent, is they say, my book is for everybody. And it's not. Yeah. Even the Bible isn't for everybody. It's a great selling book. But there's only about 20% of the world's population is Christian. So if you're trying to sell a Bible to, and look how many translations there are of the Bible. There's the King James. It's there is the NIV, the KJV. So it's it's finding the right book and describing it. So if you're learning if you want to, my advice to an author is to read a lot of the books that are like yours, and then use some of that to describe your book. And then they do that when it comes to screenwriting. They'll say this movie is like a combination of Stand By Me mixed a little bit with Night at the Museum. So it's kind of finding that. But each book is unique in itself, but you want to say what it's kind of like so that you give people an idea, and then you can refine that as your book becomes more prominent. You can refine that. So if somebody is trying to sell their book to me as a bookseller, I need to know what it's like. I need to know if it's going to meet my customers' needs. So I hope that's useful advice.
Yeah, yes, it does, and we're coming down to the wire. I had a lot of other questions I wanted to ask you, but definitely want to ask you this one really quickly. What tips can you give writers to get their books in front of booksellers?
Well, actually, I wrote an article as that, because since I am both an author and a bookseller, I actually wrote a piece that is, if you Google Kevin Coolidge and Ingram Spark, there's a piece I wrote. Because I publish my books with Ingram Spark, so it's use Kevin Coolidge and Ingram Spark. If you Google that, they'll come up with a little article I did of how to get your book in front of a bookseller. So what you you need to do is you refine your pitch. You tell me what your book is like. You have to know kind of what as an elevator pitch. Because I have to know if it's something that is going to meet my customers' needs. Like one of the things I always try to do, because I have as a bookstore owner, I have authors email me all the time, and I try to look at each one, but there can be a lot. So you need to have it be concise. You need to have it set so that I can look it up and say, okay, this is something that I know my customers will like. Because there's some things that just aren't going to, because I know my customers, so there's some things that I'm not going to be able to sell. Doesn't mean it's not a good book. I just know that it's not good for my demographic. Because sometimes it's interesting because there's a lot of tourists that come here in the summer as opposed to winter. So it's almost like two different bookstores because I'll have some visitors from bigger metropolitan areas, and so a book might sell here in the summertime, but it's not going to sell out of my store in January.
Interesting. Oh, thank you for sharing those tips. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate. Where can off-the-shelf listeners get copies of your book?
Well, you can buy the copy of the Totally Ninja Raccoons from me personally at wellsborobookstore.com. And, of course, you can buy it wherever books are, so you can get it. Like I said, and of course, I love bookstores, having a bookstore, so I like to support small business. So you can go, if you're lucky enough to have a bookstore in your town, you can go to the bookstore and say, could you order me a book by Kevin Coolidge, The Totally Ninja Raccoons? And they can. Or, of course, you can buy it online. You can buy it at barnesandnoble.com. You can buy it at amazon.com. You can buy it at walmart.com. There's several places, and they're even available internationally. So, when this goes out, I mean, you might have listeners in the UK, and I've actually sold some of the Totally Ninja Raccoons in Britain, and that's a lot of fun too, to be able to get a royalty check that come from the UK. So you can get them wherever books are sold.
Okay. And are you on any social media networks, Kevin? Before we sign off today, can you let us know if you're on any social media networks?
I sure am. I'm very good at social media. The Totally Ninja Raccoons have their very own page. I also am For My Shelf Books is also very big on social media. We're a small town, only about 3,000 people, but For My Shelf Books and Gifts has a Facebook page following that's international. We have almost 12,000 people that are fans, so you can go on there and learn a little bit more about For My Shelf Books. We post lots of fun literary stuff. We post jokes. We post events. We post things about the Totally Ninja Raccoons. So you can catch us on Totally Ninja Raccoons or For My Shelf Books and Gifts on Facebook.
Okay, thank you. We have had the absolute pleasure of having Kevin Coolidge. He's the author of several books, including the Totally Ninja Raccoons book series, which we focused on today. But he's authored over 11 books, and he owns, with his wife, My Shelf Books and Gifts. You can support them online or offline. They're in Pennsylvania. Please visit Kevin Coolidge online at authorbookings.com/members/Kevin-Coolidge. And he just told you some places where you can catch him on social media, but you can hop over to Amazon or go to My Shelf Books and Gifts and get copies of The Totally Ninja Raccoons by Kevin Coolidge, and that's Coolidge. Thank you so much for being here with us, Kevin. And we want to thank all of our listeners, those of you who tuned in for the first time today, and our loyal listeners. Thank you. Please go out and create a fabulous day for yourself. And as I always tell you, remember, you are marvelous. You are incredible. You're awesome. Have a wonderful day. Kevin, I'll shoot you an email. So enjoyed your interview, Kevin. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye.